Greg for quite a long time. So I first met Greg when I was a very young councillor in Hammersmith and Fulham, and Greg is still a neighbour and was running a business which I seem to remember, was it picture framing or mirrors? Yeah. And since then, Greg has gone on to set up and is now running Octopus Energy, which is, you know, one of the biggest energy companies in the UK. I'm co-chair of SERA, so you kind of have to wonder what went wrong for Greg. in all seriousness, I'm really, really pleased, not just because you're a mate, but to have Greg from Octopus, because if anyone has been following the news and the current energy crisis and the cost of living crisis, throughout this, whenever I've turned on the TV and radio, there's been one reasonable voice that's informed, that has something to say and ideas as to how to help working people, apart from the Labour Party. But compared to what the government has to say on this in particular, the sane voice has been coming from Greg Jackson, in my view. So I'm really pleased to welcome you here and to say a few words at our reception. Greg.
Oh, thank you, Melanie. Oh, that was... I don't want to spoil it now. Thank you. Hey, actually, I'll tell you where it went wrong, which was you won the election. And a confession is I stood for the council and lost by, I think, 23 votes. And after 2 or 3 recounts, I realised that I wasn't going to get the chance to change the world through politics. And so instead decided to do it through business. And I think, actually, today a big theme from Rachel Reeves was the way in which business and government can work together to drive the change we need. And I don't think there's any better example, actually, than energy, where, a bit like with the internet, really, government policies drove renewable energy generation to the point that the economics kind of make it a no-brainer. And now is the time to really go hell for leather, to electrify cleanly our energy system. And so, in a way, that kind of path, Melanie, brings us back together tonight, and I'm really proud. Thank you. What I should say, very briefly, because you don't want loads from me, but I think for too long in energy, companies and indeed government have talked about the back end, about how many terawatt hours and how many gigawatts and how many tons of carbon. But the reality is that at the end of every wire is a household or a business that's using that energy. And actually, it's incumbent on us to remember that our job is to drive down the cost of energy, to slaughter the idea that the green revolution is going to cost more, because it isn't. Even before the energy crisis, we could generate, new renewable generation could generate electricity at 4 or 5 pence a kilowatt hour, when the price people were paying was 16. Cheaper than gas even then. Of course, now we've seen the impact of our dependence on fossil fuels, and I won't labour that because we all see it, but it's brutal. If a decade ago we hadn't cut the cream crap, today this crisis would not be so bad. Worse than that, actually, we'd be exponentially better off, because I think my big message tonight is the more of it we do, the easier it gets. Like, every wind turbine reduces our need for gas. Every solar panel makes the return on investment for batteries, grid-level storage cheaper. Every cheaper electron makes heat pumps a better alternative to gas boilers. And remember, it's not just cheaper, it's not just better for carbon, but it also eliminates local air pollution that kills 30,000 people here in the UK. The equivalent, by the way, of a pandemic every 4 or 5 years. That's what we deal with today, what we think is acceptable. And I'm really privileged tonight that Matt, hello Matt, Matt is one of our team who kindly picked me up in one of our engineering vans from the station. Thank you, Matt. An electric van, by the way. And Matt, forgive me, I don't want to labour the point because you want to come on the stage, but it was like you are personally training, coaching and managing people who are installing solar panels, heat pumps, electric vehicle chargers and smart meters. This is a revolution that's not only great for consumers, not only great for the environment, but actually is creating better jobs for the future. And I think we're going to be proud of that. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you. And thank you. Amazing. So, Alan, it's your turn, I think. We've also got, this is also another important person that, the past few days we've heard all of these policies coming out that I've got to say, I didn't say it at the rally, but I did say it privately to Ed. When I saw Keir's interview in The Observer on Sunday, and when I've read the media coverage and heard the speeches since, I've got to admit that I actually have been crying more than once this week, because to see the policies that we've been campaigning for and advocating for so long, not just being adopted by the Labour Party, but actually being in the front and the centre of this conference has, it's just moved me and made me realise, firstly, how long things take, but also that we get there eventually. And one of the people who has been working on this even longer and much, much harder than I have, and who actually gets very little recognition often, is Alan Whitehead. So I'm really, really, really pleased to ask Alan to come and say a few words.
Well, thanks, Melanie. And you said more or less how I've been approaching this conference this week. Ed earlier on was saying how how long he'd been spending at Labour Party conferences, and he did quite rightly call over to me and saying, I'm sure Alan could outdo me on that, and he's right. I've been attending Labour Party conferences every year, one way or another, since 1976. And never before have I been in a position where I could actually say everything we wanted as far as the green agenda is there now on the headlines of our position as a Labour Party, and our position going into an election which we can clearly win now, and put those policies into operation. And the force of the... by the way, there's more to come later in the week, I ought to tell you. But the force with which we can now go ahead and really be the party that actually is the party that is bringing about the green revolution, is actually doing the hard work that is the difference between having the aspirations for net zero and the reality of net zero over the next period. All of that is now laid out in front of us. Now, it is up to us to make that happen. Unfortunately, I won't be there in Parliament to see that happen, because I'm not standing at the next election. But I will certainly be with everybody in spirit. And I see Andrew Pakes, by the way, I see has just... he's just left, all right, yeah. So, he's, one of the people that I'm hoping is going to be able to carry that flag on when he gets elected for Peterborough shortly. So, it's a sort of bittersweet position that I think we're in at the moment, although I certainly don't intend to retire. So, what I will be doing is carrying on the fight in different ways, but not necessarily actually in Parliament, but there's still quite a long way to run at the moment. But what I wanted to say in terms of, yes, you're right, Melanie, I have been campaigning for these things for all my parliamentary career, which is now a very long one, and substantially before that. And I really think that if it hadn't been for SERA, over a lot of that period, there would have been a lot of time when a lot of us would have actually essentially lost hope. And it's SERA's continuous presence, campaigning, doing the work, keeping that message alive in the Labour Party, keeping the ambition that we had and do have on the forefront, that I think has been so important in the position we've got ourselves today. So thank you, SERA, for everything you have done in getting us to the position we are in today, and you are genuinely irreplaceable. And when I came in, there was the, how do I describe him? Yes, that's right. The member at the door had a little thing saying, save SERA. Well, we don't need to save SERA, because SERA has saved us. And that's how we need to look at it, I think, for the future of SERA. So, brilliant stuff, SERA. May you have many years more of making sure that now we've got all that position in place, we actually do it all for the future as far as the party is concerned.
That's it for now for the speeches. There's just one other thing I want to say, because the whole time I've known Alan, I've wanted to say this and I haven't, is that Alan is the only MP that I know of that's had to shout out a name check by Led Zeppelin at a Led Zeppelin gig. So carry on drinking, and thank you all.